Very long, very nice. I think this is inspired by John Strange. So,
Woo! All right, here we go. Welcome today. How we doing? It's Wednesday. All right. You know, just feel like I want to say heute ist Mittwoch. Just want to say it in German. I don't know. I just felt like it. Today's just been like a totally discombobulated day already. Big time. All right. Welcome, Joe. See, I got you behind Tyson. So you know you're gonna have an interesting day when you press the garage opener and it only opens up maybe a foot. You know it's gonna be a good day. It's gonna be a good day. So then what do you normally do? You just keep pressing it, hoping it's just gonna get up. It's just gonna get up, go up. It's gonna go up, and it doesn't go up. And of course, I have a 7:35 meeting to be at, and you know me, I like to be punctual, I like to be concrete, sequential, all that stuff. And it's like crisis mode, all that stuff, troubleshooting all kicks in. It's all kicking in. So then if your garage door doesn't open, what do? Break it down, turn it into the Incredible Hulk. Or you pull the cord, the emergency cord that kind of releases it. So, I do that. And then I go lift, and that arm doesn't completely disengage. So I'm still stuck with a garage door down. I'm like, oh my gosh. Mrs. Newcomb's like, what are we gonna do? We're gonna go. And I'm like, let's break out the tools. Here we go. We take out the tools, take off an arm. Then I lift the garage door up. Then my wife's like, well, what do you want me to do? And it's like, well, I could just stand here and hold the garage door, all day, or could you please just take the cars out, and then I'll put the garage door. So there we go. That was fun. That was about 20 minutes of excitement. Woo! Still got that adrenaline going through the veins, all that stuff. Still got it. So if I'm a little amped up, that's part of it. So there we go. So now my task is find a new garage door plus, and I think it's more the motor. So I'll just replace it all. Just go. So that is going to cut into my Diet Coke budget. So with that, can you want to top that story? Okay, no, all right. Not that we have to top that story. Not that we have to. All that. So, but it is a nice day. It looks like it's going to be a nice day. So there we go. We'll get ready to go with that. So for today, we want to look at Mao a little bit more here, but I want to start off with just last week to kind of go back to like our first unit of study, which was on genocide, Rwanda, and Kosovo. Last week, a big commission report was released, two of them, one by Rwanda, one by France, and both of them acknowledge France's role in the genocide, which is huge. That's a huge omission or acknowledgement by France that they had a role, not during the genocide. They didn't come out and say during the genocide, but they had a role leading up to it. Maybe not preventing what was happening, continuing dealing with the Hutu extremist government, all that stuff. So that was huge there. That was big stuff. So I'm always looking out for those things right there. But democracy, all right? And your activity yesterday was to deal with the People's Republic, creation of the People's Republic of China, all right? And they have the word peoples in it. And so that is common with some countries, like the People's Republic of China, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Laos People's Democratic Republic, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, which that's North Korea. So we look at this little prompt here. Many single-party leaders of the 20th century claim to be democratic or represent all the people. The names of communist states established after 45 mostly began with the prefix, the People's Democratic Republic of, although during elections, the voters could only choose from a list of candidates published by the ruling Communist Party. Would you consider those countries democratic? So if you look at that list there, do you really think they are democratic? I mean, I guess ultimately, what does it mean to be a democratic country? Country that believes in democracy. What does that mean? Thoughts? Here or at home, any thoughts on that? Well, I see some heads, we don't look at them as democratic countries. So to be considered a democratic country, what does that mean? Austin? Allow opposition. Okay. What else? That's good. No, that's a good point, to allow for opposition.
Kind of similar to that, people get more of a say in decisions because if you don't have opposition, you're really only choosing from one list. But if you do have that, you have much more things you can choose from. That's
Okay. Gotta have choices. Gotta have choices. We like to have choices when we go to the grocery store over, perhaps, what kind of toilet paper you want. We'll go basic there. All right. Gotta have choices. And when you go get a TV, you might want to have choices than one. You might want a smart TV. Walk in and say, turn on, and it turns on, whatever it is. We want choices. Cars, same thing. Henry Ford used to always say, hey, you can have Ford in any color you want as long as it's black. All right, that was more authoritarian. But Chevy's like, oh, we'll cut into Ford's profit here and we'll have cars in different colors. And then, so people want choices. So naturally, we're going to want choices perhaps for people who lead us. But I think the key there is the word people also. Who runs the government? In a democracy, who runs the government? In theory. In theory. Who runs the government? The people. The people. We the people. All right? The people there. So a government by the people, all that stuff becomes important. So if we look at, what's going down in Hong Kong, all right? So if we could tie Hong Kong with this study here, what's happening in Hong Kong? Anyone pay attention with that? For many years, Hong Kong had belonged to who? Well, maybe prior to the 19th century, it might have been a part of China, but Great Britain did. Then, when I first started teaching, Great Britain is going to turn it over to China in 50 years as a transition period. But you have a pro-democracy demonstration going on. Has been going on for a number of times, number of months in Hong Kong, because they're concerned that their voice of who is going to be their leaders is being diminished. And more of the leaders are going to be kind of handpicked, or have been handpicked, then put on the ballot, and they don't really have much of a choice. Those individuals are going to be there. So you want the government, I guess, and us in the United States, we do believe the idea that government should be representative of the people. And sometimes it does, we feel that, and sometimes it doesn't, but that's democracy. And JFK says democracy is not perfect by any means, has some problems with that as well. Even though it looks like, in the United States, we are addicted to the two parties, the Democrats and Republicans, we do have a lot of other voices there as well, the independents. All right. So think about that there. And so it is so when you put Democratic and People's name in the title, what does that what kind of meaning does that give? Or why is it important for them to throw the names in there, People's and Democratic?
Makes the citizens of the said country feel like they do have a choice.
You're right. Absolutely. Gives the impression that they have a choice, but it's window dressing. It's just window dressing. They don't really truly have a choice. When we go and look at the Cold War, and as the Cold War comes to an end, one of the main factors is people want choice. They want choice. They're tired of the communist leadership and they just want choice. Mikhail Gorbachev, flawed thinking was, okay, we'll open up, give pluralism, let them have choice. He still thought they were going to pick communism, and that was a flawed thought. So we'll leave it at that. Okay, so when you look at creating the People's Republic of China, what was Mao's secret sauce here then? If we look at his formula, so really that BHQ here, how did he do it? How did he consolidate and maintain his power? Based on that activity. What was his formula?
Yield to the peasants in the countryside through like land reforms and promise of opportunities.
Absolutely. So he's very appealing to the peasants, and they do buy in. You know, at first, man, it's like, all right, we got the land reform, woo, all that. You know, and they went hardcore on the business people. But was it short-lived for the peasants, do you think? Yeah. Yep. Short-lived, because eventually what happens to all these farms? Some of these farms, they become collectivized. Right, there we go. Pull a page out of the Soviets, and Fidel Castro is going to do the same thing. You know, do the same thing. All right. So peasants, what else? Got to think about, you know, a few maybe trimesters ago, or what, 2.1 or 2.2. What's kind of like the blueprint for these leaders? Realistically, that's what we're looking at. He's got his base, but what else? That activity points it out too.
Or getting rid of opposition.
Okay, Tyson's on fire. Got to get rid of the opposition. So peasant base, get rid of the opposition. You know, you got to do that because you got to have the right frame of thinking. And he does a lot of get rid of that opposition through his campaigns and movements. You got to have campaigns and movements. You got to have sweet symbols and all that stuff, and call it, you know, the 100 Flowers campaign. Brilliant. Let them criticize. Let people criticize. Put your stuff in the suggestion box. And now you know who to go after. Who to go after. May not have been the original intention, but ultimately turned out, it's like, okay, a lot of people are criticizing. We're not doing a good job. We're going to have to get rid of some people now. So there you go. All right. And then of course you got to have your police and all that there too. Got to have an effective use of armed forces to implement these programs. Get people to believe it. Force them to believe it. All right. So what I want us to do now is, okay, so he's got the People's Republic of China created here. Now he's got to create his revolutionary state. Now he's got to further dig it in. All right. And economics, as we're going to find out for any of them, is key piece here. And so the name of what he does take a page out of the Soviet Union with the 5-year plans. But then he's gonna improvise, and he wants to fast track this thing. So he's gonna have his Great Leap Forward program. So I want to show a little clip here on the Great Leap Forward program. Let's assess how well it is. All right, or how.
Whoever killed the most sparrows was praised and given rewards. Those who caught fewer were criticized and encouraged to do better the next day.
In fact, the campaign rebounded. With the sparrows gone, more insects survived to strip the crops. The same effort to get mass participation was applied to another type of cleansing, of incorrect thoughts. People were asked to look out for neighbors or fellow workers who seemed to meet the party's description of rightists or capitalist roaders or counter-revolutionaries, and who were denounced. But the boldest attempt to harness the energy and enthusiasm of the people came in 1958. To speed up progress, Mao wanted to use the force he believed in most, China's sheer numbers, for his great leap forward. Propaganda cartoons showed how the Chinese would overtake and food production. Peasants already reorganized into cooperatives were herded into huge communes. District Secretary Zhong Guodong took on another challenge.
I was responsible for setting up people's communes and turned 8 agricultural cooperatives into 2 big communes. There were over 100,000 people in each one. Big communes could handle big projects. With thousands of people to do a job, things were completed in no time.
Production brigades were directed to where they were thought to be needed most, under militia-like discipline. The party said it was a more efficient, better, faster way to build socialism. Private land had already gone. Now family life was to be destroyed as well. Peasants were to eat food cooked in central kitchens. Children would be looked after together. Mao set the target of doubling food production in 1 year. Revolutionary enthusiasm, he said, will triumph over all obstacles. He took a close interest as the peasants competed to increase yields. When the Dongshun commune promised a record harvest, it was Zhong Guodong, the district secretary, who showed the chairman round.
Chairman Mao himself visited the show field and asked how much it was expected to yield. My colleague said 50,000 pounds an acre. Chairman Mao replied to him, even if you could achieve 10% of that, it would be a miracle.
The party encouraged the rivalry. In the past, wheat yields had been 500 pounds an acre.
会上，各乡各社的英雄们用喝干大海、斩断高山的气概，摆开了争夺水稻冠军的擂台。三关乡的好汉们首先扯起了水稻亩产3000斤，紧跟着下岗乡的好汉涌上擂台，大声喝道：“保证水稻亩产4000斤，秋后丰收上北京。”北郭乡的英雄们哪能落后？三关错失加了马，我们错失赛火箭，我们亩产5000斤。全县各乡打擂台的英雄和干部们一起宣誓，争取水稻超过10000斤。
In fact, the records were bogus. Communes falsified their figures.
就把那个生产的好稻子拔到那儿堆到那儿去。
We removed all the ready planted rice from the fields and replanted it in a show field so that we could reach our quota.
是，搞不好的，又不通风不
Planting it so
透光，
densely with no light or wind blowing through meant it would rot.
搞了时间不长就都烂了。
Before long, the rice did rot, and the peasants got angry. They said, if you take all the rice and waste it, what will we eat in the
这
autumn?
个好稻子拔走，我这1亩地能产1000斤。
The peasants didn't want to go on with this cheating.
我们秋后没饭吃。 群众不干了。
I tried to get it stopped, but the municipal boss ordered us to carry
领
on.
导知道了，找了我，说你还得搞。
But the false statistics contributed to a dangerous delusion that China had plenty of food and could concentrate on other things. We must reach for the moon and the stars, said Mao. Man can achieve anything he can imagine. Great construction projects also pulled mass numbers against apparently insuperable obstacles. Lin County in Henan was an arid plain blocked off by mountains. The 3,000 kilometers long Red Flag Canal was planned to bring in water over the rocky terrain. The canal workers were celebrated as revolutionary heroes. Zhen Yangchung worked on the rock face.
I'd tie a rope around my body and swing out in the air. I used a pick to remove the loose stones. When they fell, I had to try hard to keep out of the way and avoid getting my legs broken.
Accidents were frequent. Zhen Yangchung was sent to clear up afterwards.
When you were at the foot of the mountain and looked up, you could see bits of flesh glinting in the sun. I climbed down the rope. I picked up some dirt to wipe away every trace of the bodies. Otherwise, people would have been too frightened to carry on.
But the canal took twice as many people and far longer to build than expected.
Initially, there were 30,000 on the project. The plan was that if each person built 1 meter, the canal would be completed in 1 or 2 months. But it was all much more difficult because the canal was halfway up a mountain. In the end, it took 10 years to complete.
In the Great Leap Forward's most ambitious goal, Chinese were told production of steel also had to double in 1 year. And instead of producing this just from heavy industry, the energy and goodwill of the peasants was to be mobilized again. Small furnaces were built in villages and backyards across the country. They collected any scrap they could find. Next, they melted down doorknobs, wash basins, tools. As the fever grew, people even gave up their cooking woks. He Jinhua had never made steel before, but used her ingenuity.
When we built our own furnaces, it was hard to reinforce them. Earth on its own wasn't strong, but we didn't have enough straw. I had a long pigtail, so I cut it off and snipped it into short pieces and mixed it with the earth in the furnace wall. Many of the other women cut off their hair as well.
He Jinhua's husband, Yan Tianyun, also filmed at the time, was just as keen.
The two of us competed really hard. If my team produced 3 tons of steel a shift, their team would make over 3 tons. And then I would encourage my team to think of ways to beat that.
Forests were decimated to fuel the furnaces 24 hours a day. All over China, almost everyone, even hospital doctors, neglected their normal jobs to answer the call. But even those taking part began to see it was folly.
上班都干那个，没别的活儿，乱了半天也没乱出来。
All we did was make steel, nothing else.
一个大铁，
We didn't produce anything
底
useful.
下挖坑，
How could we?
都这么烧。
We dug holes in the ground and tried to produce steel.
白
It
弄
was all
了，
such a waste of time.
白耽误了时间了。上班的
But
命
the
令，
orders came from above.
对这个
We
你
had
上
to
班
obey
命令的指示，你先干呐。
Slowly it became clear that after so much effort and time, after so much wood had been burnt, and so many pots consigned to the flames, the steel produced was impure, weak, and useless. The full effect of the disastrous experiment began to be seen in 1959. While the peasants had been making steel, they had done little else. Crops had rotted in the fields. Seed hadn't been planted. Food was already short. Because of the falsely exaggerated harvest, the government had taken a bigger share of the crops to send to the cities. A drought made the problem worse. In 1960, the scarcity turned into a major famine. National food production fell over a quarter. Local Secretary Luo Shifa had been
We can stop it there. So I think we get a little sense here. Great leap forward, just based on that little clip, success or failure. It'll be a failure. It'll be a failure. It's like an epic failure. Those are type of disasters that just totally sideline administrations, and there's a call for a new government. But this is the People's Republic of China here, and what it does, it does force Mao to kind of like step aside, but it doesn't mean he steps down. Whenever Mao steps aside, you can't go to the conclusion the guy is out of power and he's lost influence. I mean, he is the Communist Party. He's got an immense cult of personality, but it's part of, let's re-examine here with that. So what's your thoughts like on the public works project to create the canal? It's supposed to take a couple months, takes 10 years.
And like a lot of the things in the Great Leap Forward, it looks good on paper, and at first it shows signs of like being good, but then with exaggerations and just in reality, it's not as good as everyone thinks it is. Like the food, for example, like just lying about that.
Okay, so yeah, it's great ambition, you know, and here it's Mao. He's going to lead us. It's great ambition. The people are behind it, but it's full of flaws. In trying to accelerate, and that's what he's really doing, is he's trying to accelerate the modernization process, and that takes time. Even for a country like the United States, it's going to take time. It takes almost the entire 19th century for the United States to get to that modernization where we can arguably say we're the most industrialized country by the end of the 19th century, going into the 20th century. Mao wants to do it in a few years. And that's just way ambitious. And of course, the Soviets, they're going to be highly critical of what Mao is doing here as well. making the countryside furnaces. Is it worth cutting your hair off? I mean, I see a lot of long hair here. Is it worth to snip your hair off and put into it? Probably not. But remember, the peasants, do they idolize Mao? Absolutely. It's like, oh, I'll cut my hair off. It'll grow back. Woo! You know, let it go. All right. So that's something that you know, you think of what people do personally to be a part of that great campaign, something like that. Did you pick up on who is the internal threat in China? They had a couple names for these individuals who were the internal threats in China. It was part about, you know, when they wanted to get people to criticize others. And they had a name for these individuals. And that name will appear periodically whenever Mao wants to really reassert himself. People like Deng Xiaoping is going to be put in that category. Even Zhou Enlai is going to be put into that category. They sometimes would refer to them as rightist or capitalist roaders. And they're communists. They are communists, but they're just not the right kind of communists. What that basically means is they're more pragmatic. They would be willing to tell Mao, you know, your Great Leap Forward, it's too ambitious. We need to change it up. And it is the capitalists and rulers, or the rightists, who are going to take control of the economy while Mao is kind of rethinking. And you'll see some modernization happen. But what that meant was loosening up some of the control. So my final 2 points here is, one, you know, the guy made a very good point about you did it because the decisions were made from the top and it came down. If it's a true communist state, it should come from the bottom up. And so this is where we always say revolution in a communist state seems to come from top down. So again, that's flaws when you use the word People's Republic or Democratic Republic, those type things with that. And in terms of the modernization, you know, he attempts it in the 1950s, but it's not really until the late 70s where we start seeing the modernization pieces really put in the framework really put in place, where China becomes more modernized. And of course, it's after when Mao dies in 76. That's going to happen. Those rightists who are able to stay on survive. All right, enough talk there on that. What I do want us to do today, start today, and this will be our task for the next several days, is to really dig in and look at Mao's policy. So this is something very similar to what we did with Hitler and Stalin. So if you, and I've already opened it, I believe. So if you go into Schoology, you'll see Mao's domestic and foreign policies activity. Here it is. And again, you can work with a historical buddy if you want, bust it up if you need to, recreate this as a Google Doc if you want. You just want to make sure that you have all the information there. We're looking at, again, the various aspects of his policies. So with economics, we know that he wants to modernize, and his big thing is called the Great Leap Forward program. But there might be a few others that go into it, something leading up to it, prior to the Great Leap Forward program. Successes, we know the Great Leap Forward was a great leap backwards. So it was a failure. And I would say epic, because we're looking at about 10 to 20 million people are going to die as a result of it. So again, when we want to, critique and analyze Hitler and Stalin for the amount of individuals that die under their regimes, Mao, 2 to 3 times more. All right. So if we want to evaluate authoritarians based on how many people die, Mao's got to be it. All right, he's got to be it. All right, youth program. We saw like the youth being very involved in some of these worker brigades, but the youth is going to be very important here as well. Women, religion, go ahead and look at that. I have minorities here. And and one could say this group right here, the Muslims, the Uyghur, they're the ones that are still being affected by today's policies in China here. So here I gave an example, a couple examples here for the minorities in arts. I did that mainly because I don't think our book and the supplements I have really addressed it. So you also get a little sense too of what I'm looking for. All right, and foreign policy here as well. It is a communist state, and it doesn't agree with the Soviet Union. And China, in some ways, wants to present another path, another way, right, besides the Soviet Union. And they want to do it, you know, if we want to say Frank Sinatra, you know, I want to do it my way. I did it my way. I was going to say they did it. They want to do it their way. They don't want to necessarily do it what the United States or the Soviet Union says. So foreign policy is a big part of it. We got a little snippet of it with the creation of the People's Republic of China, because you have that reunification type program where they go out and they start bringing in some of these regions that they feel is historically part of China, like the home of the Dalai Lama. Where's the Dalai Lama from? Oh, I just threw a curveball in there. Thought maybe we might know the Dalai Lama. You know, he's the spiritual leader there. He's originally from Tibet. All right, and Tibet is taken over, is reabsorbed into China violently in the 1950s. So that's part of their foreign policy piece there. All right, so as always, I'm an attaching machine here. Poseidon will critique me on that one. So we have our textbook is a good source, chapter 3 in our textbook, but then also some of these other supplements too. All right. So that will be our task for today, to work on this piece. And tomorrow and Friday, work on it. It is due Monday. I'll address a little bit of this on Monday, because we'll have an activity to build off it on Monday. All right. Any questions with this piece? So Thursday, Friday, remember, I'm making the call. Those are going to be, well, tomorrow is definitely asynchronous for you because we have MCA testing for 10th and 11th. So no Google Meet tomorrow. And Friday is a Flex Friday. Probably we're going to have advisory, but for our class, we will not have a live Google Meet, so you don't have to worry about checking in for that, okay? So the next time we will get together will be Monday, Monster Truck Monday. All right, questions with that piece? All right, I was a talking machine here, so I will, those at home, stay on if you have questions, or you can exit. Those here, you're gonna work with Historical Buddy. Divvy up responsibility.